Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Hit and Hustle from irishsportsdaily.com. I am Greg Flammang, and I am joined, as always, by Jamie Uyeyama, our Canadian guru slash, I don't know, expert. I'm going to call you an expert today. I'm going to call you an expert today because we are ranking the top 25 Notre Dame players on the 2022 football team. And you're going to put on your expert hat, and you're going to tell me why all my picks are brilliant and why yours are not as good.
That doesn't sound like an expert at all.
Because I think you're going to agree with what I have going on.
I think our lists are pretty close.
I was looking at them. We have at least one player who is exactly on. You have a couple players who are I don't have, and that's fine. We'll get into that. But yeah, so I felt a little bit I guess apprehensive about doing it just because I feel like this year I have the least amount of information at this time of year than we've had in like a really long time. With the exception of like COVID, but that was obviously different. But yeah, it was hard. We'll just do like a lot of projecting. A lot of things can change. And there's a couple guys.
I expect this list. So the kind of like backstory behind these lists is that NBC Sports inside the Irish blog has compiled like top 25 lists from like guys on the beat for quite a number of years. I'm not sure if it started with Keith Arnold or if it started before him, but Douglas Farmer's now the guy at NBC Sports.
Yeah.
And he does a great job, and he's been doing it, keeping that going as an annual tradition. And ISD obviously contributes to it, and Matt and I usually kind of just get together and just kind of like go over our top 25. It usually happens in August, so you have a much better you've seen practices, more practices, definitely. You get a better idea of kind of where everyone on the team is, the standing of people on the team, all that. So I think that's kind of like, this is kind of like an early, we'll call this like a first draft of that kind of thing.
Yeah, we'll just kick it off. One player who isn't, so we're going to start off with like honorable mention guys who just kind of fell off, that were, we left off the top 25, but they easily could make it, and we could make a case for them, for any of them to kind of be put in. One guy who didn't make either of ours, and I think it's just because of injury, is Logan Diggs. Like if he didn't have the shoulder, then he would have been in my top 25.
100%.
Yeah, probably in the top 20 actually. So but he didn't make it in mine. And he didn't make it in yours, and I assumed it was for the same reason. But Jamie, why don't you go over some of the guys that were just outside of the top 25, and why they fell out right now, and what they can do to kind of get into that spot in your mind like later on.
So I mean, there's a lot of guys that I could see kind of jump on there. I mean, we'll start with Braden Lindsey. Wasn't in my top 25. I think he could be on there, and was kind of like probably like just missed it. I wouldn't be surprised if he had a big year. But I think there's just like some consistency issues that's why I kind of didn't put him on there. And there were just other guys I like better. And so I think that's kind of why he wasn't on there. But I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he has like a lights out fall camp, then he'll probably be on there. Like same with Dion Colsey, who I think Notre Dame fans are hoping that he's going to be amongst the top 25 for Notre Dame this year. But I just, kind of haven't seen enough. Just want to see more. And then perhaps he'd be on it. Like there's kind of like guys, like young guys that I think could kind of really step up, like X Watts. I mean, I don't think I would say he's probably around 40 or something if I did a list now. But I mean, all of a sudden he has a fall camp where I wouldn't be surprised if he's all of a sudden on there. Prince Colley, another guy, right? I think if all of a sudden he's kind of pushes his way to the forefront, obviously had a nice little spring game there too. Ryan Barnes is somebody that just haven't seen enough of, right? Haven't seen enough of, want to see more of them, right? I think guys like Andrew Kostovic, Rocco Spindler, not there, right? But I could be, right? Could be. If Rocco Spindler is a starter, he's probably going to be one of the top 25, right? I think, Bo Bauer, I think is like a valuable player for Notre Dame, but I don't know if he's going to be the starter at Mike. And if he's not the starter at Mike, I just couldn't put him in there. So Jade Mickey, Junior Tuihalamaka as young guys, Chris Smith, obviously a guy they just added in the portal. Clarence Lewis, I know, who had a rough season last year, but I could have a bounce back year. And all of a sudden, if he has the kind of camp and he's like, Cam Hart is out there and he's doing well on the boundary, and then Lewis is doing well on the field, then, we'll see what happens. Right. But I think there's, some good players in that group. I just, for whatever reason, they're just other guys that I just viewed that I think are better right now or project to be better.
Yeah. So you mentioned a few that I would have also, specifically Watts. He's a guy who I don't really know what his role is. And that's kind of how it is for a lot of mine who just kind of missed out. So like I didn't have JD Bertrand on there. I didn't have Jordan Botelho on there for simple fact that I don't know what their role is specifically, like how big it's going to be. I think for Bertrand, more injury wise, right? Like is he going? If I knew he was going to start over Bo Bauer, then I would just flip their spot. So like Bo Bauer made my top 25, but if I knew that Bertrand was going to start in his place, then I would just flip him. And then Botelho, like I don't know how many snaps he's going to be taking from Kaiser, right? Like, is it going to be a timeshare? Is it going to be like, you get a series or two while you're giving Kaiser kind of like a rest? Like, so that's the thing where it's hard for me to gauge. So why they got left out. And then one of the freshmen who I think could, because I put Deion Colsey in my top 25, but I could see Tobias Merriweather, like if he comes in,
oh, for sure,
and shows like, hey, I can be like a guy on at the X on the boundary, then okay, then I could see him sliding into Colsey's spot right now. So that's kind of where I fall on a lot of guys who like just guys were on the cusp of making it that didn't make it. And then you mentioned Kostovic as well, or Spindler, like that's just kind of all unknown too. So but yeah, so those are the guys that were kind of on the edge, kind of on the fringe. And so why don't we go through, Jamie, why don't you tell me your 21 through 25, and then I'll give you mine, and then we'll talk about it.
All right. So, I'll go kind of reverse. So I'll go 25, I had Zeke Correll. 24, I had JD Price. 23, I had Audric Stemme. 22, I had JD Bertrand. 21, I had Botelho, right? So Botelho and Bertrand, I think you kind of mentioned there, right? Like, I'm a bit unsure. I think Botelho to me is the guy who could like fluctuate greatly, right? Mm-hmm. Like if all of a sudden he moved way up the list, I wouldn't be shocked, right? But also I wouldn't be surprised if he's out of it, because I think you kind of need to see a little bit more from him. And you need, like you said, you want to know his role and stuff. I'm just a big believer in his talent. I'm a big believer that, he's going to be able to kind of offer something in the pass rush part of the game as well. And that's why I had him there. Bertrand, I think it's kind of like what you said about Bauer. It's like if you flip him, and I just have a hard time believing that JD Bertrand isn't going to find a way to be that starting Mike. And if he's not, then, I'll probably then the starter, whoever wins this Mike job will be that. But I just, I think he's a good football player that is, we've talked about what his limitations are, but what he's good at, he's very good at. And I think because of that, that's why I kind of had him on there, even though, he didn't really participate much this spring. And Stemme and Price are like super interesting, obviously super high upside guys. Like JD Price certainly is someone by the end of the year could be up much higher. Obviously super excited by what we saw from both these guys in the spring. And Corral had a great spring. He had a really, really great spring. And, is there a chance that he's the starting center and Jarrett Patterson's the guard? I talked about it on Power Hour this week as we kind of discussed it a little bit. But for Jarrett Patterson, it just makes sense for him to I never understood. I thought that the whole idea of like, we're doing what's best for Jarrett and he's only going to play center was not what was best for Jarrett. Because if you're just a center, you have the chances of you not making in the NFL are much greater. The chance of you making it, if you could play guard, you could play tackle, you could do these other things are much, much better rather than you're a center only prospect. And I think he is a guy who can play like multiple positions in the line. Like he was a left tackle when he first came in and was technically the second string left tackle his first year on campus. Right. So I think, and I also think that, Zeke Corral, when it comes down to it, I don't think he's obviously not a guard. Right. But if he's the starting center and he's one of your 5 best, I think that, that's exciting. Like I think he's got a chance to be a pretty good player. So that's why he made the list for me.
Yeah. So it just I kind of cheated. So I told you before, like when I sent you my list, I saw your list. I was like, oh my gosh, I totally forgot Justin Alola. So I had to shoehorn him in. So I put him in the list. He's actually above the 21 through 25. So I had Estime at 24 and Price at 25. So I am just keeping them both at 25 because I want them both in. I think the injury to Diggs kind of locks it. That those 2 guys are going to have a big role, and I think they're going to do really well in the role that they have. And I think they're going to be really important players for the team. So like top backups. And that's kind of where I put like the 21 to 25 guys, like guys who I see just kind of like key role players. So that's where I have them. At 24, I have Jacob Lacy. I think this is a big year for him. I think this is a big year for him body wise and just kind of being like a heavy rotation player. Last year was a lot of injuries and that sort of thing. And I think they're going to be counting on him. And I think he knows that. He's an upperclassman now. So it's going to be a big time for him. Colsey is 23 for me at the moment. I just think there's going to be opportunity for him. And I talked about it a little bit. Like I did like how he was moving around in the spring game. Obviously, it wasn't a very conducive situation to have a ton of production, but a better pass on a few occasions, and he's got multiple touchdowns in the game, right? And that's something I talked about before too. So 22, I have Clarence Lewis. Just opportunity again, right? Like, is his starting corner? Like, frankly, he should be higher. Just not that I think he's ranked in the wrong way or anything. It's just that
I think if we had seen more from the corners and the receivers and everything, that he probably would have been higher.
Right.
And
right.
I would have put him probably in the top 25 too.
I'm not saying higher, like he should be higher, like we ranked him wrong. I think that he's about to be almost a 3rd-year starter, right? Like that should be higher on the list than 22 is what I'm saying. So, but I think there's a chance for him to take a leap, right? Like he's going, started last year. Okay, now it's like you're going in your true junior year. It's time to make a leap, like mentally as a player. So that's kind of where I view him. And then at 21 is Bo Bauer. I kind of explained that already. Like I think right now I have him at that starting Mike spot, and we know they like him in the nickel, right? So they like him in pass coverage. They liked him as a blitzer last year too. So I think that's going to be the opportunity there. But he's one where it's like I mentioned before, I think he could be cycled out. Like if Bertrand starts for him, I think whoever starts that spot, I like them, in the top 25 in that 21 spot. So that's kind of where I see those guys. So yeah, those are our 21 through 25 players. We'll go through number 16 to 20. I'll do mine first this time.
Okay.
Just to kind of switch it up. So at number 20, I have Riley Mills. 19, I have Zeke Corral. 18, Ramon Henderson. 17, Justin Alola, and 16, Braden Lindsey. Riley Mills, you ranked him higher, and I'm interested to hear about, you ranked him actually considerably higher than me. So I'm interested to kind of get your thoughts on him when we get to him. But for me, it's just hard to make a huge projection between like last year. He showed in like a couple of games, but like wasn't like a super key contributor playmaker, right? Like I feel like Howard Cross was a lot more impactful in more games, and that's why I have Howard Cross ranked higher than him, even though I feel like their snap count this year is probably going to be similar. So that's why I have Riley Mills there. I think Zeke Correll at 19 because he's a center now, because I feel like that's his spot. When he's played center, he's played really well. And so if they're going to be playing him there, then I like him and I like what he's going to be bringing to the offense. Like if he was at guard, like he wouldn't even be in the top 25, right? Like because like I feel like that's kind of the what we saw last year.
I don't think his ceiling is high at guard.
Yeah. And Ramon Henderson, obviously, I love him. I've always kind of like I love any kind of safety, but I like his game. I like his athletic ability. I don't really mind that the spring game was kind of touch and go with him. Like he had a couple poor plays there. Doesn't really bother me because we've seen him in like real games and we've seen him in big games and make big plays. So I like him there. He's going to be a steady player in this on the back end. Justin Alola, I think he's just going to be like a key rotation player, just like he was last year. Just like an important player, giving Isaiah Foskey a rest. I think we could see him in some pass rush packages where he's the other side, the Riley Mills inside, something like that to get some really good pass rush. And I think Braden Lindsey, like I think he's going to get a ton of snaps. I think he's going to get a ton of work. And look, it's a show me year for him, right? And I've always kind of believed in his ability. And I think there's a role for him in this offense to where he's going to be a key player, on a week-to-week basis. I mean, a little bit less than like what Avery Davis was last year. Like I think Avery Davis's production is going to go up this year, just basically out of necessity. And I think that Lindsey can kind of fill in whatever the role Avery Davis had last year.
Yeah, I mean, to me, Lindsey is just he's a fluctuate guy, right? Like if he ended up being one of the top 10 players on the team and one of like the top 3 skill position guys on the team, I would not be shocked at all, right? Like I think his highs are awesome. I think they're really awesome. Like obviously everyone's seen his like kind of big playability. And I think that, if you would have said 2019, after that 2019, the back half of the 2019 season, you would have just projected that this guy was going to be maybe not Will Fuller or anything like that, but like he was definitely going to be a big play guy for Notre Dame. Like that seemed like a given, right?
Yeah. And
obviously he had a miserable 2020. With COVID, he had a shoulder thing, he had the hamstring. Like it was a miserable season, right? And that obviously stunted things. And I don't think he played bad last year. I think he played pretty well, actually. You know what I mean? Had a couple drops here and there, but like I think like people probably overreacted to the one drop in the end zone. And I really think he wasn't helped at all, because Jack Cohn threw the deep ball to him very poorly,
right,
for the whole year. And I think if all of a sudden, those were better throws, you view them in a totally different light, right? So, to me, like, yeah, Lindsey I really just want to see him and hear about him having just like a lights out camp, a lights out camp. And if that happens too, I just think also the ceiling for the offense as a whole goes up. Right. So, I hope that he's like a top, like, where you have him or even higher, because I think that, I think he's got that ability. One thing I will say, I mean, there's only one play, in the spring game, but I really like how he hit that jet sweep.
The jet.
Because that reminded me of 2019. It reminded me of also when you saw him run the ball in high school. And so to me, that's that kind of acceleration and the finish on the run, right? Like that's what I want to see. So I really hope to see that from him this year.
All right. Yeah. Let's hear your 16 to 20 guys.
Yeah. So it's fairly similar to yours. I had Ramon Henderson at 20, Tariq Bracy at 19, Jacob Lacey at 18, Justin Alola at 17, and Howard Cross at 16. And I guess I don't even really need to add much on the Henderson front. I'm very high on him too. I think over the next couple of years, I think he has a chance to be really, really good. And I would not be surprised at all. I think he's going to be an NFL player. I just think he has that kind of talent, to develop and really just got kind of a taste last year. Right. So I think, and you got to realize he didn't just they transitioned to safety late in the year.
Yeah.
So this is kind of like his first full year at safety. So I just think he's just scratching the surface. So I think he's going to get better and better. I think Bracey, I just really like how Bracey played last year. I thought he did a really good job in the nickel. He obviously had a great spring just around the football. And I think some guys just mature at a different level and also find their niche. And I don't know, and it feels weird to say he's probably not going to be a starter, but like a quote unquote starting 11 when they're not in their sub packages. But you're going to play nickel. You're going to play nickel so much, and I think they're going to play nickel more this year, especially with Al Golden and some of the stuff he's bringing from Cincinnati. So I just think Bracey's going to be really good this year and productive. So that's why I had him, and I think Justin Adam Alola, I think. Like you said, I think he's going to be a better version of the guy that we saw last year. So, and I like what I saw from him in the spring. Jacob Lacey, to me, I think has a chance to be really, really good. And I think he's going to be the starting nose. And I think he's going to be basically like a better version of Kurt Hinish, in my opinion. I think Kurt Hinish is very solid player for Notre Dame and very good at times, and certainly was good in the big games too. But I just think Jacob Lacey has a little bit higher upside in terms of what he can do with pass rush and just as an athlete. I'm excited for him. And Howard Cross at 16. And to me, that was like one of those ones where probably if I'm just saying my own like personal bias, I probably would put Howard Cross top 10. I just love Howard Cross. I love his game. I love the kind of spring he had. He absolutely dominated the open practice that I got a chance to went to, like made people look silly, like was fantastic. You heard people rave about him all spring. The only reason that I have him down at 16 is you have Jason Adola in front of him. And I mean, could Howard Cross maybe jump Jason Adola? But maybe. It's possible, but I just think that the most you're kind of looking at that would be a split, and he's probably going to play it, and I would say it's probably going to be more 60-40, maybe even 70-30 or 65-35, whatever split you like. And as you're kind of looking at who's going to rush on third down, maybe they'll mix it in. I don't know how Al Washington's going to approach that, like in terms of like, are they going to mix up that third down kind of like rush packet personnel? Because you got Adam Alola, you got Mills, you got him, and it's like, I think he's as good as those other two in terms of his level of pass rush, but I don't know how much opportunity he's going to get. So that's why I had him there, but I'm very, very high on him.
Yeah. He's one of those guys like him and Justin Adam Alola. Like they're two guys, like you see them every time they're in, you just think, okay, they're going to give us good reps, right? Like they're going to give us good work, right? But like how much work are they going to get? Like that's the hard part with those guys. Like I feel like if they're both back next year, they'd be like way, way up on the list, right? Especially with Foskey gone,
Yeah.
And so that's good. It's interesting about Bracey. I was watching the 2019 Camping World Bowl last night, and it's like Bracey
just throwing on. Just wanted to watch a little bit of Iowa State.
You know what, man? You know what?
Yeah.
When you're on the treadmill and you gotta just it's like terrible. It's like 9 p.m. You gotta occupy yourself with something. So I always throw on old games. Tariq Bracey, 2019, man. He was a good player, and I think when he is mentally right, and when I say mentally right, just confidence, right? Like just confidence wise, like believing in his own ability to play and that sort
awesome
of thing.
In that Georgia game that year.
He was fantastic, right? And he had really good ball production in 2019, right? And he was making plays on the ball, and that's something that Notre Dame hasn't had. And so that's what I'm looking forward to. And look, if I didn't rank him in the top 25. That's someone that was probably like an honorable mention for me. And if I knew he was going to have that kind of hit that mindset, right? Like his mind was right and everything, then I could totally see it.
I think he's going to blitz more this year too.
That's interesting.
I think he's going to blitz more. I think they're going to blitz that nickel way more. I think he did a good job with it when he was asked to do it last year. And I think you're going to see that a little bit more. And I think he's going to be productive with it. I just see him being, even if he plays, say, like, half the snaps of the starting two corners.
Yeah,
I think he's going to get a lot of production. That was my reasoning for it.
Yeah. Good. And like the idea of Jacob Lacey being like a better version of Heinisch, like, okay, like would take, right? Like that's an exciting proposition. And if Notre Dame got that, then I think that'd be tremendous for the defense as a whole. I want to bring up this comment from Kevin Simonson, talking about, I hope it clicks for Colsey, but Thomas looks like he could be a real player. So I when I put together the list, obviously I thought about Thomas. And the thing about Thomas to me is, like, we always talk about like who is kind of like the shiny new toy from the spring game that kind of gets us all excited, and then the season comes and it's like doesn't really happen. Like I feel like Jaden Thomas fits into this a little bit. From the standpoint of, I think he still might be a year away, right? Like making plays in the spring game is like well and good, and you want to see it. It's kind of like Justin Walters, right? Like Justin Walters in the last 2 spring games has looked really good. He's had 2 interceptions, but it's like when it comes time to actually play the starters on another team, it's like they're like, oh, I'm not ready to go that way with you. And I feel like that's where it is with Jaden Thomas right now. Not to say that I don't want to quell other people's optimism that he can't play. It's just that he wasn't a factor last year when they needed people to be a factor. And so it's hard for me to go from where he was last year to he's going to take over the Colsey role, where they actually got Colsey on the field last year. So that for me is kind of hard for me to see, but I understand the optimism. I just don't think it's a 2022 thing, I guess.
I mean, it would be great for Notre Dame.
It would be great. Like, yeah. And if it did happen, like obviously we've seen it.
I tend to lean your way too. Like, I mean, I will say this, and maybe, here's the other thing. We only get, like, here's me saying for the millionth time, we didn't get to see a lot of practice, but yeah. The other old practice, I know it was like earlier, it's about halfway through spring. I wasn't really repping. There was a lot of guys hurt that day, and he wasn't really getting the reps with the ones that I was like, he would be getting the reps with the ones if I thought whatever. But, I heard he had a better spring as kind of things went along, and that's good. But to me, he's definitely a guy, like, he's got to have a great camp, and he's got to, like, and maybe hope some opportunity comes his way. Yeah, maybe he does.
Yeah. All right, Jamie. Let's do 11 to 15. Why don't you go for this one?
All right. So 15, I have Avery Davis. 14, I had Jack Kaiser. 13, I had Chris Tyree. 12, I had Cam Hart. 11, I had Tyler Buckner. This is where it gets really hard for me, because any of these guys could have easily been top 10 guys to me. And I think like Buckner is obviously the most interesting one, because like the variance on on what he could be, it's really unique. Like if you said that he was like a top 5 guy in the team by the end of the year, you wouldn't be surprised. Or, and everything changes if he goes in and lights it up at Ohio State and all that kind of stuff, right? Or all of a sudden you see him spring, you're like, man, everything is just clicking with him now, and he's got everything's there, right? Then that changes your view on it, but it's just like there's just too much unknown. The talent is so great, but there's too much unknown. That's why he's 11 for me. Avery Davis too. Probably if he wasn't hurt in the spring, maybe we'd be talking about him as like, oh, Avery Davis has made the leap.
There's
right?
just
Like,
enough unknown for him.
yeah. And I think a little bit with Cam Hart there too.
Yeah.
And that's kind of why he's there, because I think Cam Hart, if you would have told me, I thought he was going to have a phenomenal spring. And I thought this was going to be like Cam Hart, he's arrived. Like, and if he didn't already arrive last year, you know what I mean? Like I thought he was going to take it up another level, but we didn't get to see it because he was hurt. Right. And so that's kind of why I have him there, but I'm think he's going to be there. Tyree also banged up a little bit in spring as well. And Tyree's so interesting to me because I think that he could be, I think he could very well have just a monster year. Like, because
so I've seen you say 1,200 yards. So like,
yes.
tell me where, how, like, tell me what that looks like. Like, are you talking about like Josh Adams, 2017, where there's just like a bunch of times where there's just like a clear runway and he's like just basically needing to outrun people?
Well, we know he can do that.
So we know that can happen. Like,
you
give him space and he will gut you. That is true.
Yes.
He will take you apart.
So the way I see it is, I think there's going to be a lot more open holes. Like, there's going to be a lot more openings. I think they're going to have, I think because of the element of Buckner too, I think that's going to open up a lot more stuff in the running game, like it did when he played this past year. So I think that is going to be there too. And I just think he's someone who can get 12 carries and have 150 yards because he took one for 60. Right. Yeah. He just always is kind of going to have that element to him. So I think the reason why I think that like he could easily have like a monster year and have like more production technically than say Kyron Williams had last year, even though Kyron Williams had a really good
even
year
though
last
Kyron
year.
Williams might be a better running back.
Might be a better running back.
Yeah.
And maybe like, on 3rd and 2, I'd probably rather have Kyron Williams in the game or whatever. But I just think Tyree has the kind of, especially when you're going to play some of these games where all of a sudden you're like, man, Tyree's got 220 in this game because he broke 2 super long ones. Right. Yeah. And then all of a sudden that's just like, and that can kind of pile up. And I just think there's going to be more chances for those explosive plays. And then I also think, we saw obviously him make, had over 100 yards receiving in the Fiesta Bowl as well. Right. So I think, there's going to be more there. And then I think because of the Diggs injury, I think that opens up some stuff for him. And while Estime and Price, I really, really like the potential and what they can do, still don't know a lot about those guys in the pass game in terms of like protection and all these kind of things too. And that stuff matters. It definitely matters. Right. So, you're never just going to be the workhorse if you can't get that part of it. So the way I'm kind of looking at it is I just think, and I just think he also had the misfortune of, I think he was running well before he got hurt.
Yeah.
And the line was just trash at the beginning of the years, as everyone knows, with the injuries and stuff too. So the line's going to be infinitely better. Like if he was in there and healthy and playing against like some of the teams they were at the end of the year with their defenses, I think all of a sudden you're like, oh, Tyree popped a couple 100-yard games here just because they were just like blowing teams out or whatever. Right. Like, so I think there's kind of that element too. So, and I'm just a believer in him as an athlete. And I just think that, I think he's as good a back as Kyron Williams? No, I don't. But I just think that there's going to be more opportunities. The line's going to block a lot better. There's the Buckner element. And I think because of that, I think he's got a chance to really hit it. And I mean, to me, he might have some games where you're like, oh man, you only had 40 yards. But like I said, he might have 220 in some other game, right? Like it's just, I could see him easily kind of putting it up. And that's a little bit like that Josh Adams here too, right? Mm-hmm. Where he had just some monster games and obviously slowed down as the season ended with his injuries and stuff, right?
Right. And the difference that Buckner makes for someone like Tyree is like when you run the zone read, right? And people are, and the safeties are actually concerned about Buckner keeping, is like they take eyes off the back and they kind of trust the front seven that they're going to be the ones to take care of it, right? So they're flying up on the edge, and if there's a crease there, like we saw so many times, like okay, then it's to the house because Tyree's got that kind of juice, right? So that's where that comes from in terms of your mindset and everything. So my 11 through 15, all the players are the same, just kind of a different order with the exception of Howard Cross. I have him at 13. And we've kind of talked about him. And so 15 is Tyree, 14 is Jack Kaiser, 13 Howard Cross, 12 Avery Davis, 11 is Cam Hart. If anyone I'm concerned about being too low here is Cam Hart. I've tweeted a bunch about him and what kind of year I thought he had. I thought he had a great year last year. They took him off the boundary for whatever reason. I think part of it too, and we haven't given enough credit to this, is like I think he did hurt his shoulder. And we know on the boundary it's a lot more physical position. There's a lot more run support because they're always blitzing off the boundary too, right? So if you got a bum shoulder, you don't want someone coming off the edge and having to blitz all the time. So and obviously he had that shoulder cleaned up in the offseason, and that's why we didn't see him in the spring. And that's kind of like part of why, and I think you mentioned it too, like why I didn't put him higher is because, we didn't see him in the spring, right? So we don't know, if there's any progress there, right? And obviously there's going to be some, right? Just naturally, because, you get a bunch of reps and you play the next season, your game's going to take a step, but we didn't see where that, that step is taken. We haven't seen, he looks good and, more impressed or that sort of thing, making a lot more plays on the ball, like more ball production. Because last year I felt like his ball production was pretty good. He was just like inches away from having like a special season, right? Like has he made up that difference to where like he's breaking up passes left and right? Like I think if he's doing that, then we're talking like top 7, top 6, top 5 type player for Notre Dame, right? So I think the ceiling for Cam Hart is super high. And it's like you've talked about it with Tyree too. We haven't talked about Jack Kaiser as much. I think he's going to be a very, very important player for Notre Dame. I don't think he's going to be coming off the field very often. I think he's going to be in there on passing downs a lot. I think he's going to be the starting rover. And I think they're going to use him. Like his skill set is very conducive to, the types of teams that they play, right? Like you can play him against the pass. You can play him against like a running type of team, right? Like he got good run against Wisconsin last year, and he's agile enough to where he can play against, and more in the middle though, like not on the outside, right? Like that's what got them in trouble against Oklahoma State, where you had him on the edge, like JOK role. Like maybe he's not that type of athlete to where like let's make him chase slots, down the seam, right? Like that's not his game. But if you put him more central, I think that's going to be a good role for him as well. And then Avery Davis, we went over as well. He's just, he's going to take a leap. He's going to be a captain again. And, we've heard good things about his recovery as far as his knee. The rehab's going really well. So we expect that he's going to be 100%. But, where exactly does his role shake out? Like he could probably be in the top 10 if, we knew about his health. So that's the thing with Avery Davis.
Kaiser to me too, major breakout candidate. I think weirdly, this is like, I hate Notre Dame fans for this. I hate college football fans in general for this, where it's like people predicted him to break out last year. And because he was good, but he didn't quite have that breakout. So it's because that it's like, I don't know about this guy now. It's like, no, he's a good player. Like he's a good player. And
right, maybe we just missed it.
And and maybe we missed it by a year. And also, guys, there are other guys who just don't just all of a sudden go from like here to here. There's other guys who go here to here and then to here, right? Like it's just different steps for different people, right? And I think, he could take another step this year. And I think the way that I kind of think about it too is, so a guy like James Onawalu, right? Who, if you go back and look at I mean, 2016, people just want to burn 2016 out of their memory. It was a horrible year for Notre Dame fans and for the Notre Dame football team. But James Onwualu had a really great year that year. Like, and after being like the guy who was like, first he was just like the athlete who got moved to linebacker, that it was like, this guy, you could tell he plays super hard, but he just doesn't know what he's doing yet, right? And then the next year, you're like, oh man, Onwualu, you're like, gosh, this guy's always there, but he can never finish. He can never finish his play, whatever. And then he finished a ton in 2016. It's just the defense around him wasn't very good. But like, if you look at his like overall like numbers in his production, I think he had like 19 havoc plays that year, which is like an incredible year, right? And just made a ton of plays. It just that he kind of got saddled with, he should have redshirted as a freshman when he was like a receiver, just running down on kickoffs and stuff like that. And then if he would have came back for a fifth year, then all these other things different. He probably gets drafted in the NFL. Probably maybe that changes his NFL career projection, all that kind of stuff, right? And Kaiser, obviously, this is his fourth year. He still got another, could have possibly 2 years left, right? But like, there's a lot left there. There's a lot left there, even though he just graduated. Congratulations to him for just graduating. One guy who finished in 3 years, right? So, but you know, and I think, and obviously everyone's high on Marist. I'm high on Marist Leofield. Like everyone's high on him. Don't sleep on Jack Kaiser, because I really just think like, I think it's a lock. He's a top 15 player for Notre Dame this year. I think it's a lock that you said he's going to play a ton and be good, be productive, and a chance that he could really take that next step and take it to an elite level.
Yep. All right. Before we get into the top 10 here, just want to say thank you to everyone for tuning in right now. If you're new to the channel, if you're new to the pod, and if you like what you're hearing right now, just hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. Obviously that helps us out. That helps everybody, right? Like gets us more visibility on YouTube and that sort of thing. And that's what we want, right? Like we want people to enjoy our content. We really love doing it. So thanks to everyone who is here right now. And I see the chat is going off, and that's fine, right? Like have wonderful conversations, right? That's cool. Everyone's being chill. So you're having debates, and I appreciate that. So, all right, with that being said, let's move on to the top 10. And all right, I'll lead off this one. So my number 10 player is Buckner. You had him just outside the top 10. I have him at 10. Obviously, he could be higher, right? Like that's easy to say, right? Like you don't know, and it's another one. Like we haven't seen him. I don't know that he can. I don't know that he's going to be a plus player for Notre Dame on third down. I don't know that, right? I can project it. I can, make some educated guesses, but for right now, I'm not really sure. So I'm going to have him at 10. He could be higher, and hopefully he is higher. But I think even if he has 10, like Notre Dame can still have a really good season, right? Like if the quarterback is a top 10 player. Number 9 is Jarrett Patterson. I'd probably have him higher if he was playing center, but since he's playing guard, or at least it seems like he's going to be playing guard, there's an unknown element there to where I'm not sure where his level is going to be, especially after his injury, right? Never seen him play guard. So we'll have to see how that works out. Still think he's going to be a top 10 player. Like he's obviously good enough to where it's like, okay, you're going to be a really good quality starter for Notre Dame, but like how high is your level? Number 8 is Lorenzo Styles. I mean, what I'm thinking about for Lorenzo Styles this year is perhaps not the volume, but like a similar role impact to TJ Jones in 2013. It's like similar to that type of year as a sophomore, like not quite like All-American level, but like solid.
I mean, that was a pretty great year for TJ Jones.
So. It was a really great year. I don't think he's going to have the volume just because they're not going to be throwing the ball as much as they were in 2013. Like they had a terrible running game then. So
it was not a good.
So
not a good backfield.
That was not a good backfield, and it wasn't just like Tommy Rees was obviously not a runner. So what wasn't great there. But I think just in terms of the way he's used and the kind of player that he is, I think he could have that type of season, which would be really good. It would, kind of vault him into his junior season when things really take off for him. At number 7, I have Maris Leofau. I mean, this is another one where it's like, it's hard to say he could be higher because I think that the players ahead of him are like their ceilings are super high as well. Like at 7 is kind of like, okay, you could make an All-American team. Like not like first team, second team, third team, like something like that, right? Like you could be in All-American range, and I think Maris could be there. Like I think Maris could, like he could have like 15, 16, 17 tackle for loss season, right? Like he could be like the havoc plays you were talking about. Like he could just be a monster there, based on what Matt and you have been telling me about how he looked last year. If he picks up there, he's going to be like a superstar player, right? And then at 6, I have Jason Alola. I don't see like tremendous like upside like Marist has, but like Sheldon Day in 2015, right? Where it's like 13, 14 tackles for loss. Just like a really good player on the pass rush, on pass rushing downs, getting in the backfield, causing havoc plays that way. So that's kind of where I see him. How do you have your top 6 through 10? How does that come out?
So I have Styles as well. At 10, I have Riley Mills at 9. I have Joe Alt at 8, Blake Fisher at 7, and Marist at 6. And
tell me about the Riley Mills, right? Because I have him at 20, right? So that's probably our biggest discrepancy here. So tell me about Riley Mills. I'm ready to be convinced about that.
I think he's going to have a monster year. I think he still hasn't proven that he's like a great player against the run, but I think he has elite potential as a pass rusher. And I just see that. I thought last year that he should have had more opportunities. And I will say that Mike Elston maybe get a bum rap in some sense of like, with some of the rotations that he did and all that. And I think there's a reason to like, he's someone too, who's like, he's old school, very like, I mean, you got to be able to like play the run at a certain level to do it. But I just think like, because like Riley Mills didn't play the run good enough, I think he like didn't get enough. Like he should have been on third downs. Like the one game he was third down, the guy just destroyed people. And I just think he's a different. He brings a different element where Cross and Jason Adola are very much one gap penetration, just beat you with quickness, lateral quickness, and all that kind of stuff. And Mills has like good lateral quickness too, but then he has power and length and all these other things where he can long arm a guy back into the quarterback. And I just really think that like, I think he's in line for just a really, really big year. And then also too, the fact that he's like very likely going to start there at end as well. And I don't know. I just think he's got a chance to be really, really special. And he just has like, it's more of just like me projecting his upside and what he can be. And I think like with Styles, I'm like 100% with you where, I mean, he could have an All-American type year, but I think it's probably more likely where he's just like wide receiver 1 and has a very, very productive year, has some very big games. But he's like a year away from like being that like, oh, this guy's one of the best receivers in college football.
Right. Like on covers of magazines and stuff.
Yeah. Although he probably, if he has this kind of like TJ Jones-ish kind of year, he's probably going to be the guy on these magazines next year because that's usually how it typically works, right?
Yeah.
And with Alt and Fisher, and I know you have them higher than me. I mean, easily I could have put those guys like 3-4 on the list. I think it just in terms of just straight upside, they're there. But like I kind of like did it to kind of also kind of not hype them up too much in my own mind, I guess, because I think both are going to be great. But I just worry that everyone's like, oh, these guys are both going to be All-Americans this year. And it might not happen that way. So I'm kind of being a little bit cautious there, where I think both are going to be really, really good. And I think like people might get upset if they're like not lights out against Ohio State to start the year, even though that's totally unfair considering that one guy started half a season and the other guy started 2 games, right? So really, I mean, I'm sure they'll have awesome fall camps, and then I'll be one of the guys leading the hype train for it. But that was my thinking of why I kept them there instead of just having them a little bit higher. And Marist easily to me is like one of these guys. Like I think he's going to have a special year. I just didn't put him up because, as we'll get into with the top 5, that there's just guys that I just thought were maybe safer for right now. And just coming out of spring, that's how I viewed it. And that's why I put him at 6.
Okay. All right. So let's, I'll just say here. All right. So I have Blake Fisher at 3 and Joe Alt at 4. Brandon Joseph at 5. Did you have Brandon Joseph at 5 too? I think you did.
I have him at 4.
4. Okay. So here's the thing with Blake and Alt, and I'm like you, I guess. I am the person that you are fearing is going to say they're going to be All-Americans this year, because I think they're certainly of that caliber, right? And I don't know about first team All-Americans or whatever, like maybe they'll be second team. I just think those guys, like especially Joe Alt, like I just think I think they're both kind of the goods. And I don't, if they have a bad game or whatever, it doesn't mean I think that they're not the goods. You know what I mean? Like anyone could have a bad game, right? Like Michael Mayer could have a bad game. It doesn't mean that he's not like great. So it doesn't really like, I don't like see it like that. I don't think other people should as well. Like I think they're very talented. They are physically just kind of different, right? Like those guys are, Joe Alt is so big. I saw him at USC, man, and I was like, he is enormous. I mean, he is a very big person. And Blake Fisher, again, physically is just like kind of like a marvel. And and so I just feel like I don't know. I like it's kind of like you, right? Like I don't have the same caution that you do at the moment. I don't mind hyping him up. It's fine. Like I feel like if like Kyle Hamilton in 2020, right? Like I would put him at
I think he had a little bit more.
Like
he had a little bit more like production too. I think that like there was more there.
He absolutely did. And then here's the thing with Blake too, right? Like and I think part of it with Blake is that he went into the Fiesta Bowl and we were like, okay, like settle down. Like he might struggle. Like Ohio or Oklahoma State is like the best sack rate team in the nation. Like don't freak out if he doesn't have a great game, right? Like it's no big deal. And then he went out there and like gave up no pressures.
Yeah.
And like 7 dropbacks. Like it's just kind of like, okay. I think so that's what makes me think like I think we need to think about him and Joe Alt in just kind of a different way. Like they have transcended the way that this normally works, right? Like, Zach Martin, Q Nelson did not play as a freshman, right? And I imagine if he did, he would have been fine.
He could have played. I'm positive he could have played.
And frankly, maybe he should have played, but whatever. Yeah. The point is that those guys, like, it just doesn't usually work like this. And they just came in and they looked great. And Blake, after that huge long layoff, just came in and was awesome. So that's why I don't have concern about him or those guys. Like, I'll just project them as being that good because I just think they are that good. And as far as Brandon Joseph, like, look, he's already played really well for Northwestern. 2021 was a rough season for him. But here's the thing. When I hear about a guy in practice like Kyle Hamilton, who has a ton of ball, like is picking off passes all the time, like that is a
There's just not many guys like that in college football.
It's hard to do. I'm telling you.
It's very hard to find somebody like that.
Intercept passes at the college level.
Yeah.
It just is. So
his production has been incredible.
Yeah. So I think he's going to be, kind of what he was in 2019 for this team, like with a bunch of better players around him, like with a pass rush that includes Isaiah Foskey and Jason Alola and Marist and Riley Mills. It's worlds better than whatever was next to him at Northwestern, right? Like, at least in 2021. So that's why I think, he's going to be that top 5. And why don't you give the top 1 and 2, or you do your top 5 and you could do 1 and 2 since it was your turn anyway.
Well, I have Patterson at 5. I have Joseph at 4. I have Jason Alola at 3. And then we both consensus, whatever, right? We have Foskey and Mare at 1, 2, right? So I think Mare at 1, Foskey at 2, just so that's clear. But I think that the reason I put Patterson there, like I said, it's just like the baseline of him is going to be at a certain level, and that's why he's there. And I think, like, I almost can guarantee you that I'm not trying to throw shade at like the beat or anything like that, that there are going to be several people that put Patterson 3rd behind those other guys when they do these lists in the summer or whatever, right? Because that's just how it is, because it's like he's a given, and that's why there. But to me, I didn't put him there just because I just don't think he's actually the 3rd best guy on the team. And like, but I think if you said that he was the 5th guy or anywhere from like 5 to 10, probably, yeah, sure. But I think he's going to be really, really good again this year if he's healthy and everything goes right and stuff too. So that's why I had him there. Joseph, like you said, like, I just think, he's going to be highly productive. There's just no reason why he isn't going to be as productive as he was at Northwestern, like you said, playing with better players. I think he's not that the scheme is better or anything like that, but I just think because the players in the system is going to work well with the players, I think you already saw he tackled better in the spring game than he looked terrible in some of the tackling in some of the games last year when you see for Northwestern. And some of it is probably because of like the guys around him, and he's getting left in an island where he's got to cover way too much ground or whatever. Right. So, but when you saw him like come downhill and take out Audric Stemme, that's what you want to see. Right. So, I think he's going to be great this year. I think he's going to be great. Jason Alola, I put him there because, one, I easily could have knocked him down a bit because, he didn't have the spring like these other, and he's, another guy who's recovering from a shoulder surgery. Right. But the reason I put him there is just because I thought he had a great year last year. Where the kind of like the pressures didn't even really kind of, the production didn't really match all the pressure that he got. So I think you're going to see a little bit more production this year. Like you said, I think like kind of like a Sheldon Day-ish type of 2015 year. Great, which was a great year. And Sheldon Day was on All-American teams that year. Right. So that's what I kind of see out of Jason Alola in a 5th year for him. And I just know he's just like a guy who takes it very, very seriously, is like dedicated to like the craft of being a defensive lineman, and is going to like, and I also can't get it out of my mind that when, he kind of had
maybe a little bit of a rough 2020 for the most part because he had some injuries and stuff too, but that he showed up and his best games were Clemson and Alabama. And he was like probably the best defensive lineman for Notre Dame in those games. So that just has always stood out to me. So like, I like put it this way, like, I think he's going to come into like Ohio State and just like have a day,
Yeah.
like a little bit like Sheldon Day and Jerron Jones in that Florida State game in 2014, which was like a big reason there. So, that's kind of why I had it. I mean, I don't even think we need to go into Mayer and Foskey. It's pretty obvious.
They're good. They're good players.
Yeah.
Did you ever have any consideration of flipping them? Like Foskey?
No, I didn't. I was just there, but I'm actually thinking about writing. I have to go back and look at I'm gonna go look back at every Foskey sack last year and how he won, because it's crazy that I think he kind of, he has double-digit sack season. Our buddy Ashton Pollard has probably tweeted out several times that he's had 6 forced fumbles last year. I mean, it's an incredible stat, right? So, incredibly productive in that way. And the weird thing is that I think he was like, I mean, he was an awesome finisher, but just in terms of pressure rate and just like his overall level of play, especially as a pass rusher, like, I think he can get, like, there's still like another pretty big level up that he can go.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think he could have a scary, awesome year. And I'm really looking forward to watching this year. And I mean, Michael Mayer is just a baller. There's not much else you can say.
He's been tremendous. He's been tremendous the entire time. I mean, but it's funny because like Foskey probably does have like a higher ceiling. I don't know. I guess I'm thinking just of the draft.
Yeah.
He has,
but you know what though? It's funny though that you bring up the thing with Mayer. Sorry to interrupt, but because as you've seen some of these like way too early mock drafts, and I was like, Michael Mayer top 15. I'm like, and Michael Mayer is a great football player, but it's like, if you're going the top 15 as a tight end, like, you got to have like elite athleticism to go with that too. That's like the Kyle Pitts type of thing. And that's the one kind of area that's missing. He's a really, really good athlete. I don't want to like make no mistake. The guy's a really, really good athlete, but he's not running like a 4.5.
He doesn't have like special dimensions either. Like he doesn't,
No. Yeah.
Like that's the thing.
That's why too, when they say kind of like, oh, baby Gronk, he kind of is the baby part of it in terms of like, he's not fully formed big Gronk. Right. And I don't know, like, he's kind of also been like close to the same size that he's been like since like a senior in high school. Like, he's not that much bigger, and I don't think he can get that much bigger. He's just not like 6'7", like some of these other guys. And like, I think he's gonna, don't get me wrong, he's gonna play in the NFL for a long time and be very productive. I would not be surprised if he was like a first round pick. I just don't see him be like a top half of the first round, because I mean, there's very few tight ends that do. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
It doesn't matter. He's going to be an All-American.
We just watched a bunch of teams like talk themselves out of Kyle Hamilton. Like whatever.
Yeah.
I like that draft. Who knows what these people are doing? Do what you want.
Also, I did find it incredibly stupid that they were like, I'm like, Kyle Hamilton, he's no Derwin James, right? And it's like, no, that Derwin James is awesome, right? But like, it's like, okay, well, Derwin James went like 16th and Kyle went 14th or whatever. And it's like, well, and now all these people are like, well, Derwin James should have went higher. Well, people are going to say the exact same thing about Kyle Hamilton. It's how they view the position. He's an awesome football player. I mean, whatever. I'm not saying this to make you too excited, Greg, but like, chances are, because he went to the Baltimore Ravens and everything that's set up in place for him, like, as long as he stays healthy, he's gonna be like a Hall of Fame level player. Like the guy's awesome.
like
Yes.
it's
like
fine.
It would be shocking if he wasn't at the bare minimum a multiple Pro Bowl level player.
Yeah.
And like the ceiling for him is Hall of Fame because he went to a great situation. He didn't go to like the New York Jets where they're gonna lose and be terrible. He's gonna be surrounded by good coaches, smart players in a good system in a great franchise. As long as he stays healthy, the guy's going to be just lights out. Awesome.
Obviously, I cannot disagree with that. Look, many blessings to Kyle Hamilton, right? Like he's a great player. And I put him 1 through 5 in this list. No, but yeah. So that's I had Mayer 1 and 2 with Foskey as well. So and you got the rest of my top 5. So I think we'll end it there. We're right at probably the time that we usually go. This is really fun. We're gonna have to do this again, like post fall camp.
Yeah, we'll revisit it.
Yeah, we'll see where we're at. We'll see if anything's changed. But this was a fun show. I'm glad you came up with this this morning. So it was really fun.
Let me ask you this. I didn't prep you for this, so let me just say. So could be whatever. If you don't have an answer right now, you can think on it.
Okay.
But which out of the guys not named Tobias Merriweather, out of the freshmen that are coming in June, do you think would have a shot to be one? Because if you're a freshman, chances are going to be like 21 to 25, whatever. Is there any of the guys that are coming in June that you think have a shot to be in this, that, on the bottom of this list?
Well, I already have JD Price, so I guess I won't count him either. I would say, that's hard. I mean, I would say Benjamin Morrison probably, just because there's a need there and he has pretty good size. And I think that Mike Mickens is he would be wanting to get a guy like his, I don't want to say his own guy, but like this is a kind of the prototype of what he was looking for, to play, corner position, right? Like you want more size. I could see like him and Mickey forging some kind of a role, right? And I haven't heard anything about Benjamin Morrison, recently, but he just has that, like, if he's as good as, like, look, Washington was after him, right? Washington does a really good job evaluating. Alabama was after him. Like if he was good enough for that, and it was like real interest on, especially on Alabama's end, then I could see him, because there's uncertainty at corner, right? And like Notre Dame needs an upgrade.
Yeah.
So like, would it surprise me if like by week 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, like suddenly Benjamin Morrison is playing a key role in the secondary? Like that wouldn't surprise me at all. So I think probably him. Other than that, yeah. I mean, other than those
he'd
guys,
be the only guy for me. He'd be the only guy for me.
It's hard because like you would think
maybe if Eli Raridan didn't tear his ACL.
Yeah.
Maybe you'd be like, oh, he's a freak, like whatever. Just all of a sudden, this is like, he might be this year's, 29 or 2020 Michael Mayer or something like that, right? But I just, because of the coming off the injury, I don't see it. But Morrison would, I think, we'll see. I mean, that would be great news for Notre Dame if that's the case. Hopefully, Tobias Merriweather, they're both contenders for it.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. I'm in for that. So thank you everyone for tuning in today. It was really fun. As always, hit up irishsportsdaily.com. Hit the go to the premium section on the top right of the screen. Tons of great content coming out every day from Christian and Matt. There's a lot of good things. There's updates constantly. 2024 recruits, 2023 recruits. There's going to be team updates. I'm telling you, the intel piece that comes out every Friday, right, is phenomenal. It is every week. It's like, for me, I'm like, okay, I want the intel piece to come out because it's full of great information from those guys, and they do a lot of good work putting it out, putting it together and everything. So check out irishsportsdaily.com, hit the subscribe button. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you're new to the show, thank you very much for coming. Hit the subscribe button on the podcast, on the YouTube channel. We always have a ton of content there. Hit the like button, helps us, grow the show. So thanks everyone for listening, and we will talk to you again next week.